Eleanor Hartwell wrapped both arms around her unborn child and screamed into the July night as the balcony rail snapped out from under her. 3 seconds before her stepmother's palms had struck her spine like a hammer. 3 seconds before she had been a widow carrying a dead man's heir. Now she was falling. "Not my baby," she sobbed into the hot Charleston wind. "Dear God in heaven, not my baby." Somewhere below, a carriage horse screamed. The world went black. Before we go any further, friends, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and stay with me all the way to the end of this story. Leave a comment below and tell me what city or town you are listening from. I truly love knowing how far my stories travel. And now, let us return to Charleston, South Carolina, in the summer of 1817, where a pregnant widow has just been thrown from her own balcony, and the man she lands on is about to change everything. The carriage had just turned the corner at Meeting Street when the Duke heard the scream. Nathaniel Ashford rapped the roof of the cab twice with the silver head of his cane. "Slow the team, Moses." "Sir." "I said slow them." The driver hauled back on the reins. The two geldings balked and snorted, hooves skidding against cobblestones still warm from the afternoon sun. Nathaniel leaned forward, one gloved hand braced on the window frame, his gray eyes lifting toward the tall brick face of the Hartwell house. He never saw the woman fall. He only felt her. Something struck the canvas cover of the carriage roof with a sound he would carry to his grave, a dull, heavy, terrible impact like a sack of grain dropped from a great height, only softer, warmer, alive. The whole carriage rocked hard on its springs. Wood cracked. A woman's cry cut off mid-breath. "Sweet Lord, have mercy." Moses was already off, the box lantern in his fist. Sir, there's a body up here." Nathaniel was out of the door before Moses finished the word. She lay tangled in torn canvas and splintered staves, her pale blue dress ripped at the shoulder. One satin slipper, gone, her dark hair undone from its pins and spilling across the carriage bed like ink across paper. She was not moving. For one long, terrible moment, Nathaniel thought she was dead. Then her lips parted. She drew in a ragged, wounded breath. And both of her hands, both of them, he would remember this detail every single day for the rest of his life, were wrapped tight around the curve of her belly. She was with child. Nathaniel's eyes snapped up. 3 stories above, on the wide balcony of the Hartwell townhouse, a figure in black taffeta stood framed against the light of the hall. A woman. Tall, composed. She was not screaming. She was not calling for help. She was not weeping. She was simply standing there, watching. Their eyes met across the July night. The woman took one slow step backward into the shadow of the doorway, and Nathaniel Ashford understood. He did not take the time to reason it through. He did not call for the watch. He did not pound on the front door of the Hartwell house and demand explanation. 33 years of living had taught him that some truths once spoken in the wrong room could get a man killed before sunrise. He had learned that lesson first in London. He had learned it twice more since he crossed the Atlantic. He knew the face of a predator when he saw one. "Moses." "Yes, sir." "Lift her into the carriage. Gentle. Mind the child." "The child, sir?" "She's carrying. Mind her ribs." Moses was a big man born free in Philadelphia who had worked for Nathaniel for 6 years and asked no more questions than a man needed to do his job. He climbed into the ruined canvas and gathered the woman up as though she were made of paper and prayer, and laid her on the cushioned bench inside. Nathaniel swung in after her and pulled the door shut hard. "Drive north," he said. "Not to my house, to Ruth's." "Ma'am's boarding house." "Ma'am's boarding house. And take the back road by the cooperage. No lanterns lit past King Street." "Yes, sir." The carriage lurched forward. Nathaniel braced the young woman's head against the sleeve of his coat to keep her from striking the paneling with every turn. Her face, even bruised and bloodied, had the kind of fine, delicate bones that a man noticed whether he meant to or not. She was young. Far too young for the widow's black underskirt showing beneath her torn blue dress. Far too young for whatever the Almighty had just allowed to happen to her. He bent down close to her ear. "Ma'am," he said quietly. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" No answer. You're safe now. I give you my word as a gentleman. You're safe. Her hands, still locked tight over her belly, trembled once. Her lips moved, and he had to put his ear almost against her mouth to catch the single word she was fighting to say. Baby, she whispered. Your baby's still with you, ma'am. Still with you. You hold on. You hold on for me now. She did not speak again. By the time the carriage reached Ruth Ashford's boarding house down on the edge of the harbor district, the July moon was sitting clean and white above the masts of the bay. Ruth herself met them at the back gate, a lantern in one hand, and a loaded pistol tucked plain into the waistband of her apron. Ruth Ashford did not waste time on prayers or handkerchiefs. She took one long look at the unconscious woman in her brother's arms and said, Kitchen, now, and send Moses for Sarah. Sarah Gable. You see another midwife in this city I'd trust with a pregnant woman half dead on my table. Sarah Gable. Go. Moses went. Ruth shut the gate behind them and threw the heavy iron bolt. Sarah Gable was 54 years old, silver-haired, a widow in her own right, with 2 grown sons gone to sea and a pair of hands that had caught nearly 400 babies between the Ashley and the Cooper rivers. She did not speak much while she worked. She spoke only when it mattered. The baby's alive, she said at last, straightening from the kitchen table. Nathaniel, who had been standing at the window with his back turned because his sister had told him plainly that no man belonged in a birthing room even when there wasn't any birthing happening, closed his eyes for one long moment. Thank God, Ruth murmured. Don't thank him yet. Sarah wiped her hands on a clean cloth. She's got 3 cracked ribs on the right side, her shoulders half pulled from the socket. She took a hard blow to the head. And she's bruised all along her back like somebody set upon her before she ever went off that balcony. The child held on because the girl wrapped her own body around it. That is the only reason. That and Mr. Ashford's canvas. Will she wake? She'll wake. Whenever the Lord and her own stubbornness agree on it, I can't rush either one. Sarah set down her cloth. Whether she wakes whole in her mind, Mr. Ashford, that is another question entirely. Ruth crossed her arms. And what about fever? Not yet. She'll run one. Young bodies fight back. You keep the room dark. Cool cloths on her forehead. Broth when she'll take it. Don't let a soul lay eyes on her, and don't speak her name where any servant of yours can hear it. Not even in whispers. You know who she is, Nathaniel said. It was not a question. Sarah looked at him steady for a long moment. I know what family she married into Mr. Ashford, and I know what family has been coming into and going out of that house since her husband fell off his horse and broke his neck back in May. If this girl is who I reckon she is, then the woman who wants her in the ground is not going to stop because one good-hearted English gentleman caught her in a carriage. She fell from the Hartwell house. Then she's Eleanor Hartwell. Ellie Hartwell, that was. Ellie Monroe before she married. Monroe, Nathaniel repeated. That is the part that ought to worry you, Mr. Ashford. Ruth's mouth went thin. Why? Because her stepmother is Beatrice Monroe, and I have known Beatrice Monroe since we were girls in Beaufort. Sarah pulled a sheet up over Eleanor's bruised shoulders, gentle, as if she were tucking in a child. She goes to church on Sunday, and she buys arsenic on Monday. Pretty, smart, and mean as a cottonmouth in a dry creek bed. Nathaniel said nothing for a full half-minute. Then he said very quietly, she was on the balcony. Both women turned to him. The stepmother. She was on the balcony when the girl came off the rail. She did not scream. She did not call down. She did not weep. She watched, and then she stepped back inside. Ruth's mouth went thinner still. Sarah only nodded slowly, as if a suspicion long held had just been confirmed, but never surprised her. Then the girl was not meant to live out this night, Mr. Ashford. And if anyone at all learns she is under this roof, she will not. Eleanor did not wake that night, nor the next morning. She drifted at the edge of a fever that was not quite a fever, her hands still curled protectively over her belly, even in sleep, her lips forming words that Nathaniel, sitting on a hard pine chair outside the door, could not hear. Ruth brought him coffee at every turning of the hour. Sarah came and went 3 times. Moses stood the back gate with a shotgun resting easy across the crook of his arm, and he told anyone who knocked fishmonger laundress or fine lady in a bonnet that Mrs. Ashford was not receiving visitors today. By noon of the second day, the whole of Charleston had heard the news. Eleanor Hartwell was missing. The official word delivered by Beatrice Monroe herself, in her own parlor, with a black-edged handkerchief held delicately to the corner of her eye, was that the poor young widow had suffered a dreadful fit of grief in the small hours of the morning. She had been found gone from her bed. Her bedroom window had stood open. A shawl had been discovered on the front lawn. The family feared God forbid that the terrible grief of her husband's passing had finally overtaken her reason, and that she had wandered down to the harbor in the dark. Dragging of the Cooper River was to begin at first light. Nathaniel heard this from Ruth, who had it from the fishmonger, who had it from his brother-in-law who served at the customs house. "So she is killing the girl twice," Ruth said. "Once off the balcony, once in her reputation. She is preparing the ground. For what? For the estate. The husband dead, the wife dead supposedly, the unborn child dead with her. The whole Hartwell fortune becomes a matter of nearest surviving kin. And the good stepmother has a son, does she not? Caleb Monroe." Ruth's lip curled, as if she'd bitten something sour. "Drinks more than he earns, gambles what he don't drink, owes money from here to Savannah and back again. The kind of boy who smiles with his teeth, if you catch my meaning." "I catch your meaning. What are you fixing to do, Nathaniel?" He was quiet for a good long while, looking down at the coffee cooling in his cup. "I am going to keep her alive," he said at last, "and I am going to let them think she is dead. For how long? Long enough, Ruth. Long enough for her to stand up on her own 2 feet and tell Charleston what was done to her. Long enough that they cannot shut her up again." On the 3rd afternoon, Eleanor Hartwell opened her eyes. She did not know where she was. She did not know how she had come there. She knew only 2 things in this exact order: that she was alive, and that the small warm pressure low in her belly was still her child. She began to cry without a sound. The woman sitting beside the bed set down her sewing and leaned forward. "Easy, child, easy now. You are safe." Eleanor turned her head on the pillow. "Who?" "Ruth Ashford. This is my house. You are in my back bedroom, and the door is bolted, and there is a good man at the gate. You are as safe as a soul can be in this city. My baby. Alive. Moving. The midwife laid her hands on you just this morning." Eleanor closed her eyes and let out a sound that was half a sob and half a laugh, and entirely the sound of a woman who had been walking the edge of her own grave and had just been called back from it. "I fell," she whispered. "I fell from—" "We know." She pushed me. "We know, child. We know who." Eleanor's eyes opened again. They were gray as iron in that moment, gray as a storm coming in off the bay. "Does she think I am dead?" "Yes." "Good." Ruth's eyebrow lifted slightly. "Good. Let her think it. Let her think it as long as I can make her think it. Because if she knows I am alive—" Eleanor's voice broke clean in half, and she pressed her palm flat against her belly as though to steady the child inside her. "If she knows, she will finish what she started, and she will do it to my son." "Your son? Thomas wanted a son. He told me so the night before the night before." Eleanor stopped. She breathed in careful around her ribs. She forced the words out one at a time. "He told me if the child was a boy, we would name him after his father. If a girl, after mine. He never got to see either of them." She turned her face into the pillow. "He never got to see either of them, and now she means to bury the last piece of him too." Ruth took her hand and held it. "What is your name, child?" "Eleanor." "Ellie, they call you?" "Thomas called me Ellie." "Then you rest, Ellie Hartwell. You rest and you eat and you heal. My brother is out there, and my brother is a stubborn man who does not lose what he has chosen to keep. Do you understand me, child?" Eleanor nodded, weak and slow. "Your brother," she whispered after a moment. "The carriage. Yes." Was that him? That was him. Nathaniel Ashford. Some folks round Charleston call him the Duke on account of where he came from and how he carries himself. He does not much care for the name. But yes, Ellie, that was his wagon you fell into. That was his hand on your pulse before Sarah Gable ever got here. Did he? Eleanor's voice cracked. Did he see her on the balcony? He saw her. Eleanor looked at the ceiling for a long time without speaking. Then she said very quietly, "Then she knows someone saw, and she will not sleep tonight." Ruth Ashford, 50 years old and harder than the pine door she had just bolted, smiled a very small, very grim smile. "No, Ellie," she said. "I don't reckon she will." No. Across the city in the grand front parlor of the Hartwell townhouse on Meeting Street, Beatrice Monroe sat at a small writing desk with the curtains drawn and a single beeswax candle at her elbow. Her morning gown was immaculate. Her silver hair was smooth. Her hands resting on the blotter were steady. Her son Caleb stood by the cold summer fireplace with a glass of Thomas Hartwell's good brandy already half gone in his fist. They haven't found her mother. They won't. The river will be dragged tomorrow, Caleb. A girl her size in this heat carried down on the tide, they may never find her at all. That will be the official verdict. Missing. Presumed lost to grief. In a year's time legally dead. And the estate becomes a matter for the probate court. With the husband gone, the wife gone, and the unborn heir gone with her, the Hartwell fortune must pass to Thomas's nearest surviving kin, which is to say through my marriage to his late father's brother to you. Caleb drank. "You are certain, Mother? You are certain she did not?" "I was on the balcony, Caleb. I saw her go over the rail." "You saw the body." Beatrice paused. Only for a moment. Only for half a breath. Only long enough for a man who knew her better than Caleb ever would to have caught it. "I saw enough." She had not, in truth, seen the body. She had seen a carriage in the street below, and she had seen it pull away a shade too quickly, and she had not liked what she had glimpsed. But Beatrice Monroe had been raised to hold her face still through worse than this, and she had built a lifetime out of never ever admitting a mistake before the world proved it on her. "To Thomas," Caleb said, raising his glass toward the dark window. "To Thomas," Beatrice echoed. They drank. And 3 miles away in a back bedroom of a harbor boarding house with the door bolted and a lantern turned low, Eleanor Hartwell laid her hand flat against her stomach and felt her child kick strong, furious, and alive for the first time in 3 days. She did not cry this time. She smiled. "All right then," she whispered into the dark. "All right, little one. We live. And I promise you before this summer is through, the woman who did this is going to wish to the bottom of her black soul that her hands had never touched my back." Outside the door, Nathaniel Ashford heard the whisper through the thin pine boards, though he could not make out the words. He only heard her voice. He sat back in his hard pine chair. He reached down very slowly and checked the pistol in his coat, and he waited. Dawn came hot and wet over Charleston, and Eleanor Hartwell woke to the sound of a pistol hammer being eased down. She lay very still. "Ma'am." The voice was low, steady, just outside the door. "It's only me, Mr. Ashford. May I come in?" "Yes." The bolt slid. Nathaniel stepped inside, hat in his hand, and stopped 3 paces from the bed. "I ought not be in here with you alone," he said. "My sister is on the stairs. I will not sit, and I will not stay longer than needful. I need to know what you remember." "About the fall." "About before the fall." Eleanor drew a breath that hurt her ribs. "Everything." "Take your time." "There isn't time." Her gray eyes found his. "Mr. Ashford, if you are going to keep me alive, I have to tell you everything now. Tonight I may have a fever. Tomorrow she may find this house. I will not waste the hour I have." Nathaniel pulled the chair to within 3 feet of the bed and sat. "Go on, ma'am." "My husband did not die from a fall." "You are certain?" Thomas Hartwell was the finest horseman in the Low Country. He rode to hounds at 12 years old. He broke his own colts. He did not come off a saddle because an animal shied at a rabbit. That is what they told the coroner. That is what they told me." Her voice stayed flat, almost calm, and that frightened Nathaniel more than weeping would have. I did not believe it then. I did not have the courage to say so. I said it once to my stepmother, and that was the night my tonic changed. Your tonic? Dr. Everett was giving me a tonic for the child. He said it would settle my stomach. It did for a week. Then it did not. Then I could not keep my feet under me past noon. Then I could not remember what I had eaten for breakfast. Then I heard my own maid crying in the hall, and when I called out to her, she did not come. Who is your maid? Hattie Caldwell. She has been with me since I was 9 years old. Where is she now? Sent to my stepmother's sister in Columbia, my stepmother said, because I was too ill to be attended by a woman so sentimental. Eleanor's mouth thinned. Hattie has never been sentimental a day in her life. Hattie is the steadiest soul I have ever known. If my stepmother said she was sentimental, my stepmother was lying. You think Hattie saw something? I think Hattie saw everything. Nathaniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Ma'am, I need a name from you. The physician. Dr. Silas Everett. Trad Street. Everett. He turned the name over. English trained? Edinburgh. Expensive? Yes. Who pays him? My stepmother tells the household it is the estate. I have never seen the accounts. I will see them. How? Leave that to me, ma'am. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. The bruise along her jaw had purpled overnight. Her hair was braided loose over her shoulder. She looked, he thought, like a woman holding a grenade she had not yet decided whether to throw. Mr. Ashford? Yes, ma'am. Why are you doing this? He did not answer right away. I watched a woman fall out of the sky last night, he said finally. I watched another woman stand on a balcony and not raise one finger to help her. I am not a preacher, ma'am. I am not a judge. But I know what I saw, and I was not raised to look the other way. My father did. Beg pardon. My father looked the other way for 12 years. He married Beatrice Monroe 1 year after my mother died, and from that day forward, he has never not once raised his voice in a room where she was present. A small, terrible smile touched the corner of Eleanor's mouth. He is in Savannah now. On business, she says. He has been in Savannah on business for 6 weeks. I do not think my father is coming home, Mr. Ashford. I think my father does not wish to see what he already suspects. Then he is a coward, ma'am. Yes. I am sorry. Don't be. Coward fathers make stubborn daughters. It will serve me now. Ruth Ashford found her brother at the kitchen table, an hour later, a cold cup of coffee in front of him, and a map of Charleston unfolded between his hands. She talking. She is strategizing. Lord. At her age. She is 23 years old and she has already buried a husband and survived a murder attempt inside of 3 months. She was not given the luxury of being a child Ruth. Ruth sat down across from him. The dragging started. When? First light. 2 boats, 6 men grappling hooks. They are working down from the battery. They will not find her. They will find her shawl. Nathaniel looked up. I had Moses drop it off the King Street wharf last night after moonset, Ruth said. On an outgoing tide. It will wash up somewhere public by noon, and the city will settle on the idea that poor Mrs. Hartwell has drowned. I do not like deceit, Nathaniel, but I do not like funerals for the living either. You put a shawl in the river. I put her shawl in the river. The one she came to us wearing. Wet, muddy, recognizable. It will be enough. Ruth. I know. That was clever. I know, Gachinyad. By mid-morning, the cry went up along the Cooper. A boy scaling oysters at the foot of Trad Street found a lady's shawl tangled in the pilings, and inside the shawl was a crushed hair ribbon embroidered with the letter E. The word ran through Charleston before the tide turned. By noon, 3 households were in formal mourning. By 1, a bell was tolling at St. Michael's. And in the parlor of the Hartwell house on Meeting Street, Beatrice Monroe pressed a handkerchief to her lips and wept in front of the minister with the accuracy of a woman who had practiced in a mirror. My poor, poor girl, she said. My poor dear unsteady girl. I should not have left her alone even 1 hour. I should not have let her mourn in private. I blame myself, Reverend. I blame myself entirely." The minister murmured what ministers murmur. Beatrice wept harder. When the minister had gone, she closed the parlor door, walked to the writing desk, poured herself a very small glass of sherry, and drank it in one swallow. Then she rang the bell. "Send Mr. Palmer to me." The housemaid curtsied and fled. Mr. Palmer arrived inside of 20 minutes. He was a lean man in a plain brown coat with a face that showed neither age nor opinion, and hands that had done work most men preferred not to know about. Before the war, he had been a slave catcher out of Georgia. After the war, he had made himself useful to families of a certain kind in a quieter way. "Ma'am." "Sit, Mr. Palmer." "I'll stand, ma'am." Beatrice did not press him. The shawl was found. "Yes, ma'am." "Charleston will bury Eleanor Hartwell in its imagination by Sunday." "Yes, ma'am." "I do not want Charleston's imagination, Mr. Palmer. I want a body." Palmer's eyes did not move. "There was a carriage," Beatrice said. "Beneath the balcony. I saw it. Not clearly, not long, but I saw it." "Color, ma'am?" "Dark. Black or near to it. A single driver on the box. A man climbed down. I did not see his face." "Team, ma'am?" "2 horses, I think. I cannot swear to it." "Direction of travel. North when it left." "North of Meeting Street at 11 at night." Palmer considered. "Few reasons to be going that way that late. Fewer carriages in this city matching that description. I can narrow it, ma'am." "Narrow it quickly, Mr. Palmer." "Ma'am, if I may." "You may." "If the girl is alive, and if someone in this city is hiding her, then every day you wait is a day the hider gets his courage up. Best to find her inside the week." "Then find her inside the week." "Yes, ma'am." "Mr. Palmer?" "Ma'am?" "When you find her." "Ma'am?" "I did not ask you a question." A long pause. "No, ma'am, you did not." Palmer was gone a moment later. Beatrice Monroe sat alone in the parlor for a long time. Then she poured a second glass of sherry, and this one she sipped. Moses slipped in through the back gate of Ruth Ashford's boarding house a little past 3 in the afternoon, and the look on his face made Ruth set down her churn. "Trouble?" "Trouble, ma'am." "Out with it." Man on the corner of Bay and Trad. Brown coat, tall thin hat pulled low. Been standing there since noon watching every carriage that turns onto this street. I walked past him twice. Third time he looked at me. Looked how? Like he was marking me for later. Ruth wiped her hands on her apron. "You know him." "No, ma'am, but I know the kind." Nathaniel came down the back stairs 2 at a time. "Describe him again." Moses described him. Nathaniel's jaw set. "Palmer?" "You know him, sir." "I know of him. He does work for certain families that cannot afford a scandal and cannot afford a lawsuit. He was pointed out to me at the exchange last winter by a man who told me to keep my dealings honest so that I would never meet him in any other way." Nathaniel was already pulling his coat on. "Ruth, change every sheet on Ellie's bed. Burn the old ones. Move her to the small room above the kitchen." "That room has no window." "That is the point. And you, I am going to speak to a physician." Dr. Silas Everett kept his surgery in a narrow brick building on Trad Street with a brass plate on the door and a wife who played pianoforte badly in the front parlor. The bell jangled when Nathaniel stepped inside. "I am afraid the doctor is not seeing patients this afternoon, sir," the housekeeper began. "He will see me." "Sir, Tell him the gentleman from London would like a word about a prescription. He will understand." The housekeeper hesitated, then vanished up the stairs. She came back down very quickly. "This way, sir." Dr. Everett rose when Nathaniel entered. He was a man of 50, well-dressed, with the soft, careful hands of a physician who had not done hard work in a long time. He did not offer to shake. "Mr. Ashford? Dr. Everett? I do not believe we have met." We have not. But your name has been spoken in my hearing, and I thought it civilized to make your acquaintance before the matter went any further. What matter? The matter of a tonic you prescribed for a patient carrying a child. Everett did not move, not a muscle. But the color left his face all the same, and Nathaniel, who had watched men at cards for half his life, marked it. I have many patients, sir. You have one who is dead, or so the city believes. Mr. Ashford, I really must insist. Dr. Everett, I will say this once. Nathaniel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. I know what was in the bottle. I know who paid for it. I know where it came from. I am not here to threaten you. I am here to offer you the only chance you will be given in this life to sit before a judge as a witness instead of as a defendant. Do you understand me? The physician sat down slowly. I did not know, he said. At first? Go on. Mrs. Monroe came to me in March. She said her stepdaughter was of a nervous disposition, that the pregnancy was difficult, that a combative was required. I prescribed the usual. After 2 weeks, she returned and said it was not strong enough. She brought me a bottle. She said it had been imported from a chemist she trusted in Philadelphia. She asked that I dispense it under my name. And you did. I did. You did not ask what was in it. I asked. Everett's voice dropped to almost nothing. She told me. I dispensed it anyway. Why? My wife's brother owes a considerable sum to Mrs. Monroe's late husband's estate. A debt you thought to settle by obedience. Yes. Dr. Everett, you are a disgrace to your profession. I know. But you are going to be a useful disgrace. The physician looked up. You are going to write out in your own hand every prescription you wrote for Eleanor Hartwell, Nathaniel said. Every date, every dosage, every ingredient. You are going to sign it. You are going to seal it. And you are going to give it to me before I walk out of this room. In exchange, I will not tonight ride to the sheriff and swear out a complaint against you. And tomorrow depends on you, sir. Everett reached for his pen. Eleanor was sitting up in the bed when Ruth came to move her. It was the first time she had sat up on her own. I can walk. You cannot walk, child. I can walk as far as the next room, Mrs. Ashford. I will not be moved like a sack of flour. My son is going to have a mother who stood up on her own feet the first chance she got. Ruth looked at her a long moment. All right, Ellie Hartwell, stand up then. Eleanor stood. She swayed. She caught the bedpost. She did not fall. Ruth held her elbow and did not say one word about how gray her face had gone, and they walked together slow and careful down the short back hall to the windowless room above the kitchen. I hate it already. You will hate it less than a bullet, child. Yes, ma'am. Ruth settled her on the narrow bed. Sarah is coming by at sundown. She wants to listen to the baby's heart. Good. And Ellie. Ma'am, there is a man on the corner. Eleanor's hand went still on the quilt. Watching for you. Watching for a carriage that fits the one my brother drove that night. We believe he was hired by your stepmother. How long until he finds us? Not long if we do nothing. Then we must not do nothing. Nathaniel is seeing to it. Eleanor turned her head on the pillow. Mrs. Ashford? Ruth. Call me Ruth, child. Ruth, do you have paper and a pen? You are in no condition. I am in every condition. Eleanor's gray eyes did not waver. My stepmother believes she has 3 days to consolidate her story before the town loses interest. If I am going to be dead, I am going to be the sort of dead woman who leaves letters. Letters to whom? To Hattie Caldwell, wherever she is, and to the Reverend at St. Michael's, and to Mr. Pinckney, who was my husband's lawyer before the stepmother replaced him, and to a woman in Beaufort named Clementine Rivers, who is my late mother's oldest friend, and who has hated Beatrice Monroe since before I was born. You want to plant seeds. I want to plant a forest, Ruth. Child. Ma'am. You are not what she took you for. No, ma'am, I am not. Moses rode out an hour before sundown with 3 letters tucked inside the lining of his hat, and Ruth stood at the gate, watching him go with her arms crossed tight against her chest. "He will be careful," Nathaniel said behind her. "He is always careful. That is not what worries me." "What worries you then?" "That we are 2 days into this, Nathaniel. 2 days. And she has already hired a man, and the city has already buried the girl, and the stepmother has already moved into the bigger bedroom." "How do you know that last one?" "My laundry woman is cousin to her laundry woman." Nathaniel let out a short, surprised breath that might have been a laugh in a kinder week. "Ruth Ashford, you have more sources in this city than I do. I have lived here 21 years, brother. You have lived here 6. Do not start comparing nets with me." "Noted." She turned to face him. "Nathaniel." "Yes." "The girl." "Yes." "Do not fall in love with her." He did not answer. "I mean it, Nathaniel. That girl has been through something no man can mend with a kind word and a steady hand. If you are helping her, help her. If you are courting her, go home. There is not room for both." "Ruth, I am not." "Good. Keep it that way until she can choose a thing for herself instead of being chosen for." "Yes, ma'am." Sarah Gable came at sundown as promised. She pressed her ear to the curve of Eleanor's belly and listened a long time. Then she straightened, and her weathered face did something it did not often do. It smiled. "Strong heart. Strong. Strong as any I have heard this year. That child is going to come into this world hollering Mrs. Hartwell. You mark my words." Eleanor let out a breath she had been holding for it seemed weeks. "Sarah." "Yes, child. I need you to do something for me, and I am asking as a patient and as a Hartwell and as a woman who has no one else in this city she can send." "Ask." "Hattie Caldwell, my maid. Beatrice said she was sent to Columbia. I do not believe it. If she is alive, she is closer than that. Beatrice never lets go of anyone who has seen too much. She keeps them where she can reach them." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You think she is in the city? I think she is at the old Monroe place on James Island. There is a cottage there my stepmother keeps for her sister's visits. The sister has not visited in 2 years, but someone is taking provisions to that cottage every week. I remember it because I asked once and Beatrice slapped me across the mouth for asking. She hit you. That was in April. That was the first time I understood what my father had chosen to marry." Sarah's hand closed slowly around the bedpost. "I have a nephew who runs a ferry across to James Island." "Then send him." "To do what, child?" "To knock on that cottage door. And if a frightened woman answers, to tell her one thing. Only one. Tell her Ellie is alive. Tell her Ellie remembers the cedar chest. She will know what that means. And tell her if she can walk out that door and get to Ruth Ashford's boarding house that she will be safe. And if a frightened woman does not answer, then I will know my stepmother has done worse than I already believed her capable of, and I will act accordingly." Sarah gathered up her bag. "I will send word before morning." "Thank you. Ellie." "Yes. You are not going to cry in front of me, child. You are going to save those tears. You are going to need them later." Eleanor nodded once, and Sarah went out. At some point past midnight, Nathaniel Ashford stood in the dark at the back window of the boarding house with a pistol in his hand and watched the man in the brown coat walk slowly past the far end of the street. Palmer did not stop. He did not look at the house. He only walked, and at the corner he paused a moment to light a small cigar off a carriage lamp, and in the brief flare of flame, his eyes lifted directly to the second-floor window Eleanor had been moved out of 8 hours before. Then he walked on. Nathaniel stood very still for a long time after he was gone. Ruth came up behind him. "He is just looking." "He is not just looking, Ruth. He has narrowed it to this block or near to it. He is marking the rhythm of the house before he moves." "When will he move?" 2 nights, 3 at the most." "What do? We move her first." "Move her where?" Nathaniel turned from the window. "I have a cousin on a rice plantation 40 miles up the Ashley. Well hidden, sympathetic, quiet. She can rest there until the baby comes, and she can come back to Charleston on her own terms. That is 6 weeks away, Nathaniel. The estate. The estate can wait 6 weeks. Her life cannot wait 6 more nights in this house. And if the man follows, then we give him something else to follow. Ruth studied her brother in the thin moonlight. You are going to use yourself as a decoy. I am going to drive a carriage north on the high road with a woman's shape propped inside and the curtains drawn. He will follow it. Moses will take Ellie west through the marsh by boat at the same hour. By the time Palmer understands which carriage was real, she will be 2 rivers away. And you? I will be wherever he is not. Nathaniel Ashford. Yes, Ruth. You are going to get yourself shot. Possibly. For a woman you have known 3 days. He looked at her. For a woman who wrapped both her arms around her unborn child while she fell out of the sky, Ruth. Yes. For that woman. For 3 days or for 3 minutes. It is the same. Ruth's mouth did something complicated. Lord help us, she murmured. I told you not to. I have not. You have. You just don't know it yet. Eleanor did not sleep. She lay in the small windowless room with her hands spread flat across the curve of her belly, and she listened to the muffled sounds of the house settling around her, and she thought, in the clear, cold way a woman thinks when she has been given no other choice but to think clearly about the woman who had pushed her off a balcony. Beatrice had not done it alone. Beatrice never did anything alone. There had been a man on the stairs that night. Eleanor had heard his boots. She had thought at the time that it was her father come home early from Savannah. It had not been her father. Her father's boots were soft-soled leather. These had been hard, heavy driving heels, the kind a man wore when he was coming to do a thing not coming home. Caleb's boots sounded like that. Caleb had been in the house that night. Eleanor closed her eyes. Then she opened them. Ruth, she called softly. Ruth came to the door inside of a minute. Ellie, I have remembered something. Tell me. There was a man on the stairs the night I fell. It was not my father. I thought it was. It was not. It was my stepbrother. Caleb Monroe was in the house. She did not push me alone, Ruth. He was there. He was there when she did it. Ruth's breath went out of her in a long, slow hiss. You are certain. I am certain. Then he will break before she does, child. I know. A man like that does not hold a secret under pressure. I know, Ruth. That is what I'm counting on. Ruth looked at her a long moment. You are going up the Ashley tomorrow night. My brother has arranged it. A cousin of ours has a place. You will be safe there until the child is born. No. Ellie. No, Ruth. I am not going up the Ashley. I am not going anywhere that takes me a day's ride from Caleb Monroe. You cannot stay in this house. The man on the corner. I heard about the man on the corner. I also heard your brother's plan. It is a good plan. Use it. Send a carriage north with a shape in it. Let the man follow it. And in the meantime, move me somewhere in this city. Somewhere close. Somewhere I can be reached and somewhere I can reach back when the moment comes to break Caleb Monroe in 2. Ellie, Ruth, I have 6 weeks until this child is born. 6 weeks in which my stepmother is going to move through every drawer in my husband's house, every account, every deed, every signature. If I disappear up the Ashley, I come back in October to a plantation that no longer belongs to me and a son who has no name to inherit. I will not allow it. Not 1 acre, not $1, not 1 more day. Ruth looked at the girl in the narrow bed, and Ruth Ashford, who had buried a husband in the yellow fever year and raised 2 boys alone on the strength of her own spine, recognized a thing she had not seen in another woman's face in a long, long time. All right, Ellie Hartwell, she said softly. All right. We'll find you a place in the city. Thank you, Ruth. Don't thank me yet, child. Why not? Because when I tell my brother what you just told me, he is going to say no, and you and I are going to have to say yes to him together. And Nathaniel Ashford has never in 33 years of living said yes to a thing his sister and a stubborn woman agreed on without putting up a fight that shook the rafters. Eleanor almost smiled. Then let the rafters shake, Ruth. They will, child. Let them. And somewhere across the dark city, in the parlor of a grand house on Meeting Street, Beatrice Monroe set down a glass of sherry she had not yet drunk and looked up sharply toward the ceiling as though she had heard something she could not quite name. She stood. She walked to the window. She stared out into the July night for a long time, and for the first time since she had laid her hands flat on her stepdaughter's back and shoved Beatrice. Monroe felt very faintly very far away, a cold that no amount of sherry was going to warm. Somewhere in her city, something was not dead. Somewhere in her city, something was waking up. Beatrice Monroe did not sleep that night, and by sunrise, she had sent for Palmer again. "You have found nothing." "I have found a great deal, ma'am. I have not yet found her." "Explain the difference." "I have narrowed the carriage to one of 3 households. I have identified the driver as a colored man of some size, free, well kept, who does not drink and does not talk. That narrows it further. There is a boarding house on Bay Street owned by a widow named Ashford. That widow is sister to an Englishman who has been in this city 6 years and who keeps his business off the tongue of the exchange. I have been watching the house 2 nights. And last night a carriage left that house after moonset, curtains drawn, a shape in the rear seat. The driver took the high road north at a steady pace. I followed as far as the toll bridge. And—" Palmer paused. "Ma'am, I lost it." "You lost it." "The carriage crossed the bridge. I followed within the quarter hour. When I came up with it again north of the ferry landing, the curtains were open and the shape inside was a bolt of sailcloth tied around a sack of straw." Beatrice set her teacup down so carefully that it did not make a sound. "They used a decoy." "Yes, ma'am." "Then she is still in the city." "Yes, ma'am. Or she left by a different road at a different hour. I am looking into the second." "Look faster, Mr. Palmer." "Ma'am." "You have 4 days." "Ma'am, these things take—" "4 days, Mr. Palmer. My stepson arrives from Georgetown on the 5th, and the probate filing goes before the court on the 6th, and if there is any whisper in this city that the Hartwell widow is alive before that filing is signed, I will lose everything I have built in 12 years. You do not have a week. You have 4 days." "Yes, ma'am." Palmer went. Beatrice Monroe sat alone with her cold tea and did not move for a very long time. Across the city, in a narrow bedroom above a bookseller's shop on Church Street, Eleanor Hartwell was being helped into a chair by a woman she had not seen in 11 years. "Clementine. Ellie girl, you still wear my mother's locket." "Every day of my life since she gave it to me. Sit down before you fall down, child. Your mother would haunt me to my grave if I let you stand a second longer." Clementine Rivers was 61 years old, a widow twice childless, and the owner of 3 rental properties in the city and a small farm outside Beaufort. She had received Eleanor's letter at first light, read it once, burned it in her own fireplace, and been on the Charleston Road inside of an hour. "You believe me, Ellie. I have believed you since you were 9 years old, and I watched your father bring that woman into your mother's house 3 weeks after the funeral. I did not need a letter to believe you. I needed a letter to know where to come. She will look here." "She will not. Nobody in Charleston knows I own this building. I bought it under my late husband's cousin's name, and the cousin has been dead 6 years. Beatrice Monroe does not know my bookkeeping, child. She only knows my face." "Clementine." "Yes, honey. I need to tell you something terrible." "Say it." Eleanor drew a slow breath. "I think she killed my mother." Clementine went very still. "Go on, Ellie. I have been thinking about it for 3 days without stopping. My mother did not die of a wasting fever. That is what the doctor wrote. But it is not what I remember. I remember her being well in April. I remember her being weak in May. I remember her being gone in June. I remember the tonics. I remember the tonics were the same color as mine." "Ellie. Am I mad? No, child, you are not mad. You suspected. I more than suspected. I begged your father not to marry her, I told him to his face. He called me hysterical. He did not speak to me for 2 years. And by the time he was ready to speak to me again, you were 11 years old. And that woman was the only mother you could remember, and I made a choice. I have regretted every day of my life since. I chose your peace over your truth. I will not make that choice again. Eleanor closed her eyes. Then we are avenging 2 graves, Clementine, not 1. 3, Ellie, do not forget your husband. 3. And we will avenge all 3, child. But first, you and I are going to sit, and I am going to feed you, and then you are going to tell me everything you have planned, because I know that look on your face. That is your mother's look. And your mother did not wear that look unless she was about to break something. Eleanor opened her eyes. I am going to break all of it, Clementine. Good child. Everything she built, every signature, every lie. I am going to walk into a room full of Charleston, and I am going to break her in front of the men who would have signed my son away to her before the month was out. Then let us plan the room, Ellie. Sarah Gable's nephew came back from James Island that evening, and the first thing he said when Ruth opened the back gate was, "She is alive, Mrs. Ashford. She is alive, but she is not well. Bring her." She would not come. What? Mrs. Ashford, she said, and I am quoting her exact. She said, "If I leave this cottage, my mistress dies. Tell Ellie I am sorry. Tell Ellie to stay dead." Ruth's hand tightened on the gate. Did you tell her about the cedar chest? I told her. She cried. She put her hands over her face and she cried, "Ma'am," but she would not come. She said there is a man who rides out from the city every 3rd day to check on her. She said if she is gone, when he comes, he will know, and he will go straight to Mrs. Monroe, and Mrs. Monroe will come straight to Ellie. Who is the man? She would not say his name. She said he is not a servant. She said he is something worse. Ruth swore softly. Palmer. Ma'am, the stepmother's man. He is watching Hattie too. Of course he is. That woman does not leave a loose thread alone for a day. Ruth turned her head and called into the house. Nathaniel, come out here. Nathaniel came. He listened without speaking. When the boy was done, he said very quietly, "Then we get Hattie out on the day Palmer rides." How? We let him ride. We let him get halfway to the ferry, and then one of our people meets him on the road with news too important to ignore. Something about a carriage, something about a shape in the marsh, something that turns him around. He rides back into the city. And while he is riding back, another of our people crosses to James Island by a different landing and brings Hattie Caldwell home. Nathaniel. Yes, Ruth. That is thin. It is thin. It could get the woman killed. She is already going to be killed, Ruth. The stepmother does not keep a witness on James Island forever. Whatever date Palmer has been given for that cottage, it is not far off. We act tomorrow, or we do not act at all. Ruth looked at him a long moment. Tomorrow, then. Tomorrow. And Ellie. Ellie needs to know before we move. If this goes wrong, she has to be ready to go underground the same night. Then go tell her brother, and while you are there, do not fall in love with her. Ruth. I said what I said. Eleanor heard the plan in silence. When Nathaniel was done, she asked one question. Who rides to meet Palmer on the road? I will. No. Mrs. Hartwell. No, Mr. Ashford. If Palmer sees your face tomorrow and recognizes it later, we lose the only man in Charleston my stepmother does not yet know is helping me. You are more valuable alive and unseen than brave and remembered. Then who? Moses. Moses is a colored man on a country road with a white woman's errand. That is not safer. That is worse. Moses has been a free man his whole life, and he has papers to prove it, and he has ridden that road twice a month for 6 years. He is not going to be stopped. Send Moses. Send him with a letter sealed in Clementine's name on Clementine's paper, so that if Palmer reads it before he burns it, the return address is a dead husband's cousin in Beaufort, not a boarding house on Bay Street. Nathaniel looked at her. You have been thinking about this all afternoon. I have been thinking about this since I was 9 years old, and I did not yet know I was. Ma'am, send Moses. He sent Moses. And the next day at noon, Palmer rode out of Charleston on a gray horse with a pistol in his saddlebag, and instructions from Beatrice to check the James Island cottage and return by sundown. At the 2-mile marker, he was met by a colored man on a mule who tipped his hat and said, "Beg pardon, sir, are you Mr. Palmer of Meeting Street?" "Who is asking?" "My mistress is Mrs. Rivers of Beaufort, sir. She has been stopping overnight at the King's Arms, and she has had word from her laundrywoman of a body in the marsh north of the toll bridge. She has sent me to find you particular. She says her late husband knew your family, sir, and she would trust no other man with a matter so delicate." "What body?" "A woman, sir. Young, in a blue dress." Palmer's eyes did not change, but the reins in his hand tightened. "Where?" "Mistress is waiting at the tavern, sir. She will tell you herself. She will not speak of it on the road." Palmer turned his horse. Moses waited until he was well gone, and then he rode the other way as fast as the mule would carry him. And within the hour, a different man in a flat-bottomed skiff was beaching at a quiet landing on James Island, and walking calm and unhurried up a sandy track toward a cottage half hidden in palmetto. The woman who opened the door was 32 years old, thin as a shaving, and her eyes had not been dry in a long time. "Hattie Caldwell." "Yes, sir." "Ellie sent me." Hattie's knees went. He caught her by the elbow. "Easy, Mrs. Caldwell. Easy now. We have a boat and we have an hour. That is all we have. Pack what you cannot leave and leave what you cannot carry and come." "My mistress." "Your mistress is alive. Your mistress is in Charleston. Your mistress is sitting in a chair right now drinking broth she does not want, and the thing she wants most in this world is to see you walk through a door. Come." Hattie Caldwell wept one long shaking sob, and then she stood up straight, and she did not weep again. "Let me get the letter." "What letter?" "The letter my master wrote 3 days before he died. I hid it in the cedar chest. It was the only way I knew to tell her if she ever came looking. The cedar chest. It was a signal. I did not know if she would remember. She remembered Mrs. Caldwell. That is why I am at this door." Hattie went to a low cedar chest at the foot of the narrow bed, and pried up the false bottom with her fingernails, and from beneath, she drew out a folded paper sealed in red wax with the Hartwell crest. "Mr. Thomas gave it to me the night before he rode out, sir. He told me if anything happened to him, I was to put it into Mrs. Ellie's hand, and no other. He told me nobody else. Not her father, not the lawyer, not the preacher, only Mrs. Ellie." "Did you read it?" "No, sir. I could not have read it if I wanted to. I do not read, sir." "Then we will read it together with your mistress, Mrs. Caldwell. Bring it. Come." Nathaniel himself met the skiff at a pier on the far side of the city at the hour before sunset, and he brought Hattie Caldwell up through alleys and back gates to the bookseller's shop on Church Street, and he did not even knock before he pushed open the door of the narrow bedroom upstairs. Eleanor was asleep in a chair, one hand across her belly. "Ellie." She opened her eyes, and then she saw Hattie, and for the first time since a stepmother's hands had struck her spine, Eleanor Hartwell put her head down into her own shaking palms and wept without stopping, and Hattie Caldwell crossed the room on her knees and laid her face against the swell of Eleanor's stomach and wept with her, and Nathaniel Ashford closed the door from the outside and went downstairs and sat in the dark of the bookseller's front room for a full quarter of an hour without saying one word to any living soul. When he came back up, the two women were composed, and there was a letter on the small table between them, still sealed. "You have not opened it." "I would not open it without you," Eleanor said. "You have earned it." "Mrs. Hartwell, I have not." "Mr. Ashford, sit, please." He sat. Eleanor broke the seal. She read in silence for 2 full minutes. Her face did not change. Only her hand, the one holding the paper, trembled very slightly at the edge. Then she set the letter down. Thomas knew. "Knew what, ma'am?" "Knew she was going to kill him." Nathaniel did not move. Eleanor's voice was flat and clear and almost conversational. which was how he would come to know she spoke when a thing had cut her too deep to bleed right away. He suspected her from the first week of our marriage. He did not tell me because I still loved her then. I still called her mother. He did not want to be the man who broke that in me, so he wrote it down instead. He wrote down every account she had tampered with. He wrote down every servant she had dismissed without his permission. He wrote down the name of the stable hand she paid for a thing he does not name in this letter, but which I now know was a saddle strap. He wrote down the name of the physician. He wrote down the name of the apothecary. He wrote down that if he died before the child was born, the child would die next, and then I would die, and then the estate would pass to Caleb Monroe through his mother's second marriage into the Hartwell line. My God. And he wrote down one thing more, Mr. Ashford, which is the thing I did not know and which changes everything. Tell me. Eleanor turned the paper over. Beatrice Monroe was not married to my father when I was born. She was engaged to my uncle, my father's elder brother, the man who built Hartwell Plantation and who died at sea in 1802. She was 19 years old when he left on that voyage, and she was still waiting for him when the news came back that he was drowned. My father and my mother took her in because she was to have been family. My father arranged her passage back to her own people in Virginia. She never went. She stayed. She waited. And 3 weeks after my mother died, she put on a clean dress and she walked into my father's parlor, and she told him that by the memory of his brother, she intended to marry him. And he said yes. She was not your stepmother by chance. She was never a chance, Mr. Ashford. She was a campaign, for 20 years. First for my uncle, then for my father, then for my husband's estate, through me, through my son. Every step of her life has been one long walk toward the Hartwell name, and I was the last door standing between her and the title deeds, and she was not going to be denied on the threshold, not after 20 years. Nathaniel let out a long, slow breath. Mrs. Hartwell. Yes. Is your father in danger? My father is already in danger. My father has been in danger since the day he signed his second marriage. He simply has not yet been called upon to pay for it. If the child in my belly is a boy, my father's life ends the week after the birth. Beatrice has no use for a living husband once a grandson stands between her and the estate. Where is he? Savannah, she says. I do not believe it. I will send a man to Savannah tonight. Send 2, Mr. Ashford. Send 1 to Savannah, and send 1 to every inn on the road between here and there. My father is 57 years old. He drinks more port than his liver can bear, and he travels nowhere without a valet named Isaiah. Isaiah is loyal to him, and has been for 30 years. Find Isaiah and you find my father. And if you do not find Isaiah at all, then my father is not on that road, and we must look in a darker place. Yes, ma'am. Hattie, who had been silent, spoke for the first time. Mrs. Ellie? Hattie. There is more, ma'am. More than the letter. Eleanor looked at her. Tell me. On James Island, ma'am. The man who came to check on me. Mr. Palmer. He came drunk once, ma'am, just the once in May. He sat on the step of that cottage, and he would not leave. He talked to himself. He talked about a woman in Beaufort. He said Mrs. Monroe had sent him to Beaufort in 1805, ma'am, long before I was at Hartwell. He said there had been a woman there too, a sister of Mrs. Monroe's first husband. He said she had money that was supposed to come to Mrs. Monroe, and she did not give it up, and then she died of a fever, and Mrs. Monroe got the money. He said it like it was funny, ma'am. He laughed. He said Mrs. Monroe had a way of arranging fevers. Eleanor closed her eyes. My mother in 1806, this woman in 1805, my husband in May, and myself in July. 4 Mrs. Ellie. 4. That I know of, ma'am. Eleanor opened her eyes. Mr. Ashford. Yes. We are not going to court, not first. A court in this city will argue my stepmother's case for a year, and in a year she will have married another man, buried another witness, moved to another state. We will not give her a year. We will not give her a month. I am going to take her in front of Charleston itself, in a room where she cannot run, and her friends cannot cover her, and I am going to break her in one night. How? The summer ball at the Exchange. Mrs. Hartwell, that is. 8 days from now. That is where half the city will be. Half the city is exactly the number I need. She will be there. She will be there in black mourning, grieving her dear lost stepdaughter, and Charleston will pat her hand and say how brave she is. I will walk in halfway through the evening alive, pregnant steady with Hattie on one side of me, and Clementine on the other. And I will hand the master of ceremonies a letter written in my husband's own hand, addressed to the Reverend of St. Michael's, and I will ask him to read it aloud to the room. Mrs. Hartwell, yes, you are asking to be shot in a ballroom. I am asking to survive one. There is a difference. She cannot shoot me in front of 400 people, Mr. Ashford. She can only watch. And watching is the one thing in this world Beatrice Monroe has never been any good at. Nathaniel looked at her a long time. You have thought about this. I have thought about nothing else since Sarah Gable told me the baby's heart was strong. There is risk. There is always risk. There is enormous risk. Mr. Ashford. Yes. You caught me once in a carriage already. I am going to need you to catch me again. He was quiet a long moment. Then he said, I will be there. I know. In the room. I know. Armed. Do what you must, sir. I am only asking you to stand where I can see you. You will see me, Mrs. Hartwell. Thank you. In a gambling house on the wrong end of East Bay Street that same night, Caleb Monroe lost $600 he did not have to a man from New Orleans who did not take promissory notes, and when the man named a date and a place and an hour, Caleb walked out into the street and was sick into the gutter. He wiped his mouth on his sleeve. He walked home. He let himself in the side door of the Hartwell house at something past 2 in the morning, and he found his mother still awake in the parlor, still dressed, a single candle low in its cup. Mother. Caleb. I need money. You have already had money this month. I need $600 by Friday, or a man from New Orleans is going to cut my throat in a doorway. Beatrice looked at her son. Sit down, Caleb. He sat. You have a weakness, she said. You have always had a weakness. I have forgiven it because you are my blood and because I understand weakness in a man. But I will tell you one time, and I will not tell you again. I did not spend 20 years of my life walking toward this house so that a New Orleans gambler could cut my son's throat 4 days before the probate filing. You will have the money. You will pay the man. You will not sit at another table until this estate is signed. Do you understand me? Yes, Mother. Good. Mother. What? Is she dead? Beatrice did not answer for a long moment. The city believes she is dead. That is not what I asked. Caleb, do not ask me questions I have not yet chosen to answer. Mother, if she is alive, we handle it. If she is alive, I am going to hang. Caleb, you put your hands on her spine, Mother. I stood on the stairs. I saw it. I watched you do it. If she walks back into this city breathing, I am the man Charleston sees next to you when the truth comes out. Me, not you. You are the grieving widow. I am the drunkard stepson on the stairs. I know how this town reads a story, Mother. I know who hangs in it. Beatrice stood up. She crossed the room, and she slapped her son across the face so hard his head turned. You will never say that sentence aloud in this house again. Mother. Not aloud, not whispered, not written, not thought. She is dead. The city believes she is dead. You believe she is dead. I believe she is dead. That is the only truth that keeps any of us breathing, Caleb, and if you break it, I break first, and I promise you by your father's grave, I will not break alone. Caleb put his hand to his cheek. Yes, Mother? Go to bed. Yes, Mother. He went. Beatrice sat back down in her chair, and she did not move again until the candle burned itself dead in its cup. 6 days later, on the morning of the Exchange summer ball, Palmer knelt on the floor of a bookseller's back alley with blood pouring from his nose and Nathaniel Ashford's boot planted square on his chest. "Mr. Palmer, Mr. Ashford, you have been watching the wrong house. So I am learning, sir. You are going to walk away from Charleston tonight. Am I? You are. Because in my coat pocket I have a signed statement from a physician on Trad Street that names Mrs. Beatrice Monroe as the purchaser of certain imported compounds, and a letter in the hand of the late Thomas Hartwell that names you by name as a man previously employed by her in an earlier matter in Beaufort, and a deposition from a woman named Hattie Caldwell, who will swear before God and this city that you held her against her will on James Island for a period of 9 weeks. Any one of those papers lands a noose around your neck, Mr. Palmer. All 3 of them together hang you twice. What do you want? I want you gone, tonight, before sundown. I want you on a boat out of this harbor, and I want it known to you that if any one of my people hears your name spoken again in this city, those 3 papers walk straight into the office of the circuit court. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." "Get up." Palmer got up. He wiped the blood from his mouth. "Mr. Ashford." "What?" "She will kill the girl tonight if she can reach her." "I know. She has a second man, not me, one you do not know about." Nathaniel went very still. "Name?" "I do not know his name. I know he came up from Savannah 2 days ago. I know he is the one who has been minding her husband." "Her husband? Her husband is not in Savannah, Mr. Ashford. Her husband is in a house on Sullivan's Island, and he has been there since the day his daughter fell off the balcony, and the man minding him is paid to decide on a word from Mrs. Monroe whether he lives or dies. I tell you this because I am walking out of this city tonight, and I do not wish to walk out of it with the deaths of an old man and a young girl on the same bill. Find him before you break her, or break her knowing he will be dead by sunrise." Nathaniel did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, "Go." Palmer went, and Nathaniel Ashford stood alone in a back alley at noon on the day of the exchange ball, with 8 hours left until the doors opened, with a father held hostage on an island he could not reach before sundown, and with the mother of a child he had already decided he would die, to protect waiting 3 streets away, to put on a pale blue dress and walk into a ballroom full of a city that had buried her. He turned on his heel and he ran. He found Moses at the stable behind the boarding house inside of 12 minutes, and he did not waste words. "Sullivan's Island, now! Her father is there. Take 2 men, take pistols, take whatever boat will carry 4 bodies back across the harbor before full dark. The man guarding him is waiting on a word from Beatrice Monroe to kill him. If that word comes before you reach the house, we lose Mr. Monroe the same hour we take the stepmother. Sir, the ball. The ball is at 8. You have 5 hours. Go." "Yes, sir." "Moses." "Sir." "If the man fires on you, fire back." "Yes, sir." Moses went. Nathaniel stood in the yard for 1/2 second longer than he could afford, and then he turned and walked at a pace just short of a run back toward Church Street. And he thought for the first time in 6 years in this country that he might have sent a good man to die on his word alone. Eleanor was already dressed when he came up the back stairs. Not in the pale blue, in slate gray, high-collared, long-sleeved cut, wide enough for the curve of her belly, severe enough for half-mourning, plain enough that no one in a Charleston ballroom could ever afterward say that the widow of Hartwell had come back to town to show off a gown. Clementine was behind her pinning her hair. Hattie was on her knees at the hem. Ruth Ashford was standing by the door with a small loaded pistol tucked plain into the pocket of her skirt. "My father. I have sent Moses. Will he reach him? I do not know." Eleanor drew a breath. "Tell me the truth, Mr. Ashford. Not a comfort. The truth. The truth is, I sent him an hour too late. The truth is, Sullivan's Island is an hour and a half by water in a good wind, and the wind has been soft all afternoon. The truth is, the man holding your father has been watching for a rider, not a boat, and that may buy us the 15 minutes we need. I would not promise more than that, ma'am." Eleanor nodded once. "Then we proceed." "Ma'am, if we proceed and the word reaches him before Moses does your father, I know what happens to my father, Mr. Ashford. I have known it all week. I did not let myself speak it, because if I had spoken it, I would not have been able to button this dress. My father chose 12 years ago to look the other way. He chose it every year since. He chose it the night she pushed me off the balcony, because he was not in this house when he swore to me he would be. I love him anyway. I love him enough to send 3 armed men to an island for his life. But I will not let her go free tonight because my father made 12 years of bad choices. If she kills him because I stood up in that room, then I stand up in that room with his blood on my hem, and I still stand up. Do you understand me, Mr. Ashford? I understand you, ma'am. Good. Then hand me the letter. He handed her the letter. She slipped it into the small silk bag at her wrist. Clementine. Yes, Ellie. You will walk in on my right. Yes, child. Hattie. Yes, ma'am. You will walk in on my left. Yes, ma'am. If anyone in that room tries to lay a hand on either of you, you step behind me. Not in front, behind. They will have to come through me first, and they will not. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Ashford. Ma'am, you will enter separately 5 minutes before us. You will take a position where you can see the main doors and the side entrance from the cloakroom. You will not approach. You will not speak. You will watch Caleb Monroe. Because the first one to break tonight will be him. And when he breaks, I need a man in that room who can put a hand on his shoulder before he finds his way back out through a servant's door. Ma'am? Go. He went. The exchange hall at 8 o'clock was full to the walls. 400 souls. Merchants and their wives. 2 judges of the circuit. The rector of St. Michael's. The master of the port. A United States senator passing through from Washington. 3 Hartwell cousins called down from Georgetown for the memorial prayers that were to be read at the stroke of 9. And near the long windows in immaculate black taffeta, with a black lace fan held delicately against her collarbone, Beatrice Monroe stood receiving condolences with the soft, wounded dignity of a woman who had lost everything and kept her faith anyway. Caleb Monroe stood 6 feet from her, a glass of punch in his hand he had not touched, sweat at his hairline he had not wiped. At 8:15, the master of ceremonies tapped a silver spoon against a crystal glass for attention, and the room quieted for the memorial. The rector stepped forward. He cleared his throat. He opened his prayer book, and then the side door of the exchange hall opened, and a woman in slate gray walked into the room with 2 other women at her shoulders, and the punch glass slipped straight out of Caleb Monroe's hand and shattered on the marble floor. The sound was very loud in the sudden quiet. Beatrice Monroe turned her head. She did not drop her fan. She did not stagger. She did not cry out. The color went out of her face in one single wave, like a tide pulling back from a shore, and then she smiled, the small, practiced smile she had worn for 12 years, and her voice, when it came, was steady as a church bell. Ellie, oh, thank God, child, you are alive. She stepped forward, both hands outstretched. Eleanor stopped her with one raised palm. Do not touch me. The whole room heard it. Beatrice's smile did not break. It adjusted. Child, you are unwell. You are clearly unwell. Look at her, Reverend, look at her. She is confused. The grief has taken her wits. Let us get her home. Let us get her into a bed. Reverend Latham? The rector, who had not moved since the door opened, looked at Eleanor. Mrs. Hartwell, I have a letter for you, sir. Written in my husband's hand. Sealed with his seal. Dated 3 days before his death. He asked that it be delivered to you, and to you alone, if he were to die before our child was born. I am asking you now to read it aloud to this room. Reverend. Beatrice's voice sharpened only a shade. The poor girl is not in her right mind. A private parlor, please, I beg you. I beg, Reverend. Eleanor did not raise her voice. She did not have to. My husband wrote this letter in his own hand. You knew his hand. You married us in that church. You baptized his cousins and his father before him. I am asking you as a daughter of this parish to do what he asked of you. Read it, here, now, in front of this room. and let God sort what is and is not in my right mind." The rector looked from Eleanor to Beatrice. He looked at the letter. He took it. He broke the seal. Beatrice took one step forward. Nathaniel Ashford, from the edge of the room, took one step forward at the same instant, and his hand settled without fuss on Caleb Monroe's shoulder from behind, and Caleb did not move. The rector began to read. He read the first paragraph, and the room went still. He read the second paragraph, and a woman near the front began very softly to weep. He read the third paragraph, which named the stable hand, and the physician, and the apothecary, and the compounds. He read the fourth paragraph, which named Beatrice Monroe by name as the author of a tonic given in March to a pregnant woman. And he did not need to read the fifth, because Caleb Monroe made a sound in his throat like an animal caught in a wire, and he turned into Nathaniel's hand, and he said loud enough for the three nearest men to hear. "She pushed her. My mother pushed her. Off the balcony. I was on the stairs. I saw it. I saw it. I saw it. Oh, Christ, forgive me, I saw it." Nathaniel did not say a word. Three Charleston merchants who had been standing a pace away turned and stared at Caleb Monroe with their mouths open. One of the judges of the circuit court set down his glass on a side table very, very carefully, as a man does when he has just realized the evening has changed under him. The rector stopped reading. He looked up. Beatrice Monroe had not moved. Her face was as white as the lace at her throat, and her fan had lowered, and her eyes were fixed on her son across the room, and the look in them was not maternal. It was murderous. "Caleb." Her voice did not shake. "Caleb, you will be silent." "No, mother." "Caleb." "No, no, mother. Not tonight. Not with Ashford's hand on my shoulder and a judge 6 feet from me. You said she was dead. You swore it to me. You put my hand on the Bible, and you swore it. She is not dead. She is standing in that door. And you are not going to stand here and tell this room I dreamed what I saw. I saw you. I saw you put your 2 hands flat on her back, and I saw her go over. I saw it, mother. And I have not slept 1 hour since." The hall did not move. Not one person. Beatrice Monroe turned her head very slowly toward Eleanor, and for one long moment every mask she had ever worn in her life came off her face at the same time. And what was left was not a grieving widow, and not a Charleston matron, and not a mother. What was left was a woman who had waited 20 years for a house she believed was hers by right of the dead, and who had just watched a child she had once rocked to sleep walk into a ballroom and take it back. "You." Her voice was low, almost conversational. "You should have drowned, Ellie. You should have had the decency to drown." "I know, mother." "Do not call me that word. I called you that word for 12 years. I will call you it one more time in this life. I called you that word the night you put your hands on my back, and I will remember that I called you that word every day for the rest of my life. You do not get to take it from me now." Beatrice's hand moved toward the small beaded bag at her wrist. Nathaniel saw it. So did Clementine. Clementine Rivers, who was 61 years old and had not raised her voice above a parlor tone in 30 years, said in a perfectly flat, clear voice that carried to every corner of the hall, "She has a pistol in that bag. I watched her put it there this morning from across the street. Gentlemen, if you would." 2 of the merchants moved first. A third caught Beatrice's wrist before her hand could close. The bag was taken. The bag was opened. The bag contained, as Clementine had said, a single small-barreled pistol loaded, primed, and cocked. The room exhaled as one animal. Beatrice Monroe, whose wrist was being held by a cotton factor from East Bay Street, looked once at her son, once at her stepdaughter, and once at the rector with the letter in his hand. Then she spoke to none of them. She spoke to the judge. "Your Honor, I will require counsel." "Yes, madam, I expect you will." Pet. Outside the hall, the hour had not yet struck 9. Inside the Hartwell Memorial, prayers were never read. Instead, Judge Pinckney, who had been present in the hall as a guest, took charge of the matter with the quiet efficiency of a man who had been waiting half his career for a night like this one. And within 20 minutes, Beatrice Monroe was in the custody of the sheriff. Caleb Monroe was in the custody of a bailiff, and the letter written in Thomas Hartwell's own hand was folded into a lockbox, sealed in the judge's presence by 3 witnesses, and carried out of the hall on its way to the circuit clerk. Eleanor did not speak during any of it. She stood between Clementine and Hattie, one hand flat on her belly, and she watched her stepmother be led out of the hall with a sheriff's hand at her elbow. Beatrice did not look at her as she was taken past. Beatrice did not look at anyone. Beatrice walked the length of the exchange hall, with her head up and her back straight, and Eleanor understood in that moment that the woman would not confess. Not tonight. Not in any court. Not ever. The evidence would hang her, but the words would not come out of her own mouth. That small pride was the last thing Beatrice Monroe owned in this world, and she was going to carry it to the rope. Ellie? Clementine's hand was at her elbow. Ellie, you are shaking. I am not shaking. Child, you are shaking from your shoulders to your knees. Sit down, before the baby tells you to sit down in a way you cannot argue with. Sit. Eleanor sat. Hattie crouched beside her and pressed a glass of water into her hand. Drink, ma'am. Hattie. Drink. She drank. Across the hall, Nathaniel Ashford was speaking quietly and urgently to a young officer of the port in a blue coat. The officer nodded twice and left at a run. Nathaniel crossed the room. Ma'am. My father. The port officer will ride to the ferry landing now. If Moses has reached Sullivan's Island, word will come back to us before midnight. If Moses has not reached him, word will also come back to us before midnight. Either way, we will know. Nathaniel. Ma'am. If he is dead. Then he is dead, Eleanor. And you are alive. And the child is alive. And you did not cause his death. She did. 12 years of her did. Not tonight, not you. She looked up at him, and for the first time since he had pulled her out of a broken wagon in the street beneath her own balcony, she did not look like a woman fighting for her life. She looked like a woman who had just set her life down on a chair for 1 minute because it was too heavy to carry any farther. Mr. Ashford? Nathaniel. Nathaniel, sit down a moment, please. Just a moment. He sat. Neither of them said anything for a long while. What? It was 11:15 when the message came. A boy ran up the steps of the exchange hall where the last of the crowd was still standing in small stunned knots, and he handed a folded paper to the port officer, who read it once and walked straight to where Eleanor was still sitting. Mrs. Hartwell. She looked up. Your father is alive, ma'am. Moses and 2 other men went ashore at the back of the island with lanterns dark, and they took the house from the rear garden, before the man inside understood he had visitors. There was 1 shot fired. The man inside fired it. No one was hit. He is in custody. Your father is being brought back across the harbor now. He is weak, ma'am. He has been drugged for the better part of a week. But he is alive, and he is asking for you, and Moses says to tell you that the valet Isaiah is with him, and that Isaiah has not left his side. Eleanor put her face down into her hands. She did not make a sound. Clementine's hand was on her shoulder. Hattie's hand was on her back. And Nathaniel Ashford, who had been trained from boyhood not to touch a woman in public for any reason, reached across and laid his hand very briefly on the crown of Eleanor's bent head. He did not say anything. He did not need to. The inquiry opened 3 days later and ran for 6 weeks. It was not clean. It was not short. Beatrice Monroe retained the finest attorney in the state of South Carolina, a man named Huger, who had made his name defending men no one else would defend, and he mounted across the length of the summer every defense a dollar could build. Eleanor was unstable. Eleanor had been mistaken. The letter from her late husband was a forgery produced by enemies of the Monroe family. Caleb Monroe was a drunkard whose word could not be trusted in a stable, let alone a courtroom. Dr. Everett had been coerced. Hattie Caldwell was a servant and therefore unreliable under oath. Clementine Rivers was a bitter old woman who had nursed a grudge for 20 years. Every accusation was answered. The physician's own handwriting was placed beside his signed testimony. The apothecary's ledger was subpoenaed and produced. The stable hand, Elias Crow, was located on a farm upriver and brought in under guard, and he broke the first hour he was in the witness box and named the night, the amount, and the hand that paid him. Caleb Monroe, whose nerves did not survive the second week, testified for 3 days straight and named every detail of the night of the balcony, and wept and named his mother and named himself, and asked the court to hang him because his sister had not drowned and he could no longer live with the thing he had watched. Beatrice Monroe testified once. She did not weep. She did not raise her voice. She denied every charge in a calm parlor tone and did not look at her stepdaughter once, not for a single moment across the length of a full courtroom day. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Beatrice was convicted on 3 counts: the attempted murder of Eleanor Hartwell, the murder of Thomas Hartwell by conspiracy, and the unlawful imprisonment of John Monroe, her husband. The court took under further advisement the older question of the death of Eleanor's mother in 1806 and the woman in Beaufort in 1805, both of which would be reopened by the circuit in the autumn term. She was sentenced to hang. Her attorney filed an appeal. Caleb Monroe was convicted on 1 count of accessory and sentenced to 20 years at hard labor. He did not appeal. He walked out of the courtroom on the arm of a bailiff, and he did not look at his mother. Dr. Everett surrendered his license and left the state. The apothecary was charged and fined. Palmer was never found again. On the last day of the inquiry, Eleanor walked down the steps of the courthouse into the September heat, with Clementine on one side of her and Hattie on the other, and her father leaning on Isaiah behind her. John Monroe had lost 30 pounds on Sullivan's Island and aged 10 years in a summer, and he had not yet raised his eyes to his daughter's face without tears coming to them. He tried on that last day. Ellie. Papa? I did not? Papa, not today, not on these steps. Ellie, you must let me. Papa. She stopped, and she turned to him. I know. I know everything you want to say. I have known it my whole life. I will hear it from you one day. I will hear it. But today I am tired, and the baby is kicking, and I want to go home. Will you come home with me, Papa? Back to the house. He nodded, and he could not speak. Eleanor took his arm, and Nathaniel Ashford, who had stood through 6 weeks of testimony without once approaching her in public, was waiting at the bottom of the courthouse steps with a carriage and a team of 2 bay horses and his hat in his hand. And she walked down to him and she said, Mr. Ashford, will you drive us home? Yes, ma'am. All of us. My father, Isaiah, Clementine, Hattie, and me. Yes, ma'am. To Hartwell. Yes, ma'am. And she climbed into his carriage with her father behind her, and Nathaniel closed the door, and he climbed up onto the box himself beside Moses, and he drove them home. The first weeks back at Hartwell were not the homecoming Eleanor had imagined in her darkest nights on Church Street. The house had been stripped, not of furniture, but of something harder to name. Every drawer had been opened. Every letter had been read. Every servant had been questioned. Some had wept when Eleanor walked through the front door. Some had not been able to look at her at all. 3 had gone to Beatrice of their own free will during the summer and did not come back. Eleanor did not weep in the front hall. She stood in it a long moment, one hand on her belly, and she said to the housekeeper, Mrs. Coyle, open every window in this house, every one, upstairs and down. I do not care about the heat. I want this air out of these rooms before nightfall. Yes, ma'am. And Mrs. Coyle. Ma'am, the bottles. In her dressing room, in the pantry, in the still room. Any bottle in this house that was not here before my marriage. I want them in a crate in the backyard before supper. I will not have them in the walls I am going to bear a child in. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Coyle. The housekeeper hesitated at the door. Mrs. Hartwell. Yes. I did not know, ma'am. I swear before God I did not know what she was giving you. I thought it was a tonic. I gave it to you myself twice, ma'am. Twice. I have not slept an hour over it since. Mrs. Coyle. Ma'am. Look at me. The woman looked. I know you did not know. I know. And I am not going to send you out of this house for a crime that was not yours. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am. Good. Then go open the windows. And when you come back, there is a child's cradle in the attic that belonged to my husband's grandfather. I should like it brought down to the room beside mine and cleaned. Not the nursery, the small room. I will not put a baby in a room at the other end of a long hall for a little while yet." "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Coyle went, and she went quickly, because she understood that the woman who had come back to Hartwell Plantation was not the girl who had left it. Eleanor's father did not recover the way a younger man would have recovered. He ate, he slept. He walked with Isaiah at his elbow up and down the length of the back gallery in the mornings. But the weight did not come back to him, and the color did not come back to him, and when Eleanor sat with him in the evenings, he would hold her hand for a long time without speaking, and then he would say almost always the same sentence, "I should have seen her." "Papa, I should have seen her, Ellie. Your mother told me. Clementine told me. Your husband told me in a letter I never answered. And I should have seen her." "Papa, you are seeing her now. That is not the same child." "No, Papa, it is not. But it is what you have, and it is what I have, and we are going to make it be enough." He would nod, and he would close his eyes, and he would hold her hand a while longer. She did not ask him to promise anything. She did not ask him to speak at the trial. She did not ask him to go into town. She let him sit on the back gallery with Isaiah and drink weak tea, and she walked in the kitchen garden twice a day with Hattie, and she wrote letters in the mornings with Clementine at the writing desk, and she put her own house back together, one drawer at a time. Nathaniel Ashford did not come to Hartwell in those first weeks. He sent word by a boy on a Tuesday, and he sent word by Moses on a Friday, and he sent a basket of peaches from his sister's garden on a Sunday. But he did not come himself. Ruth Ashford told him to his face one evening in the kitchen of the boarding house that he was a fool. "That girl has been set upon by every soul she trusted for half a year, Nathaniel. She needs a man in her life right now who does not want a single thing from her. You stay away, she thinks you have taken your pay and gone. You come too soon, she thinks you are another mouth wanting to be fed from her plate, so you do the other thing. You send peaches. You send Moses. You send word. And you wait. You wait until she asks. You hear me." "I hear you, Ruth." "Good. It is a long wait. It will be as long as it needs to be, brother. Women like that one do not hurry back into a parlor, and you do not want them to." He waited. Eleanor went into labor on a cold morning in late October, 3 weeks before anyone had expected her to. It was Hattie who came down the back stairs at first light, with her hands still wet from the wash basin, and it was Hattie who said to Mrs. Coyle, low and steady, "Send for Sarah Gable, and send now. The waters have come." Sarah Gable was at the plantation within 2 hours. The labor was not easy. It was not easy because Eleanor's body, for all her stubbornness and all her courage, had been pushed off a balcony in July and cracked 3 ribs and been drugged for months before that, and the child inside her had held on through every one of those blows, and now that the child had chosen to come, it was coming against a tide of old injury that no amount of willpower could smooth. Sarah did not lie to her. "This is going to be hard, Ellie." "I know. Harder than you have already had." "I do not care. You are going to care before we are done. You are going to want to stop, and I am going to tell you that you cannot stop, and you are going to hate me for it. And then you are going to hold your child." "All right, Sarah. All right, girl." It took 14 hours. At the 11th hour, Eleanor's strength nearly broke, and Hattie, who had held her hand from dawn to dusk, leaned down to her ear and said low and fierce, "Ellie, Ellie, you listen to me. You did not survive that woman, so you could die in a clean bed. You hear me. You did not fall out of the sky wrapping your arms around this baby, so you could let it go now. You get your breath. You push Ellie Hartwell. You push. Eleanor pushed. Her son came into the world at 9:15 in the evening, and he came into it hollering exactly as Sarah Gable had said he would 6 months before, in a narrow room above a kitchen, the first afternoon his mother had ever heard his heartbeat. Sarah laid him on Eleanor's chest. Eleanor did not speak for a long time. She only held him and looked at him and breathed. Then she said very softly to the small red furious face at her collarbone, "Thomas, your name is Thomas, for your father. And I am going to tell you about him every day of your life, and I am going to tell you he was a good man, and I am going to tell you what he wrote in a letter to save you, and I am going to tell you that you are here because he loved you before he ever saw you. Do you hear me, Thomas Hartwell? Do you hear me?" The baby went on hollering. Hattie was weeping at the foot of the bed. Clementine was at the door, with her hands pressed flat against her mouth. And downstairs in the front hall, John Monroe sat in a chair with Isaiah's hand on his shoulder and wept without sound for the grandson he had nearly not lived to meet. Nathaniel came 3 days later. He came because Ruth sent him. He came because Hattie sent word through Moses that the mistress had asked twice now whether the peaches had come in from Mr. Ashford's garden this week. He came with a small carved wooden horse in his coat pocket for the baby, and he came with his hat in his hand, and he came up the front steps of Hartwell Plantation at a walking pace, and he stood in the front hall, waiting to be announced, and Eleanor Hartwell came down the stairs with her son in her arms, and looked at him for a long moment before she said anything at all. "Mr. Ashford, Mrs. Hartwell, you did not come." "No, ma'am." "Why?" "Because you did not need another man in your house until you were ready to choose one." Her mouth did something, not quite a smile. "Ruth said that to you." "She did." "Ruth Ashford is a wise woman." "She is." "Come into the parlor, Mr. Ashford. I should like my son to meet the man who caught him out of the sky." He came. He sat. She put the baby in his arms without asking, and Nathaniel Ashford, who had held horses and pistols, and the reins of a ship, and the hand of a dying man in his 33 years, did not know what to do with a 3-day-old child. And he sat very still with the small warm weight against his chest, and did not breathe for about a full minute. Eleanor watched him. "He is not made of glass, Mr. Ashford." "Ma'am, he is so small. He is the loudest thing in this house. He has been the loudest thing in this house since he got here. You are allowed to breathe around him." Nathaniel breathed. The baby opened his eyes. They were gray. Not Thomas Hartwell's brown. Not Eleanor's gray either exactly. A gray of their own. "He has your eyes, ma'am." "He has his own eyes. He is his own person. He is going to be his own person every day of his life, and I am going to let him." "Yes, ma'am." They were quiet a while. Then Eleanor said, without looking at him, "Mr. Ashford." "Ma'am." "I am not ready." "I know, ma'am." "I do not know when I will be." "I know that too. I may not be, ever. Do you understand that, Mr. Ashford? I may not be. I have been married once, and I loved him, and he is dead because of a woman who is going to hang for it. And I am 23 years old, and I have a son, and a plantation, and an aging father, and 2 lawsuits in the autumn term, and I do not know whether there is room left in me for another man. I am telling you this in my own front parlor on the 3rd day of my son's life, because I respect you too much to let you hope in the dark. Do you hear me?" "I hear you, Eleanor." "Then go on hearing me, because what I am saying is not no. What I am saying is not yet. What I am saying is I do not know. And if you can live with I do not know, for as long as it takes me to know, then you are welcome in this parlor every Sunday afternoon that you have the time to come. And if you cannot live with I do not know, then I will not hold it against you, and I will not hold it against your sister. And there will be peaches from my orchard at your back door every summer of my life, as long as you care to take them." He looked at her a long moment. "Eleanor." "Yes. I can live with I do not know." "You are sure?" "I am sure, ma'am." "Then come to supper on Sunday." "Yes, ma'am." He handed the baby back to her. He picked up his hat. He went. Beatrice Monroe was hanged in the yard of the Charleston jail on a gray morning in the first week of December. Eleanor did not attend. Eleanor was at home at Hartwell in a rocking chair by a low fire, with her son asleep on her chest, and her father asleep in a chair across from her, and Hattie sewing quietly by the window. She did not know at what hour the thing was done. She had asked not to be told, not until evening, not until it was fully over. Clementine came up from Charleston at dusk with the news. "It is done, Ellie." "Yes." She did not speak. I did not think she would. She did not ask for a minister. She did not ask for her son. She did not ask for her son. She did not ask for your father. She stood on the platform with her head up, and she did not say one word, and then it was done. Eleanor closed her eyes. She held her son a little tighter. "Clementine." "Yes, honey." "I thought I would feel something." "You are feeling something, Ellie. I am feeling tired. I am not feeling what I thought I would feel." That is what feeling something is sometimes, child. You thought you would feel triumphant. You thought you would feel free. And instead, you feel tired. That is the honest shape of it. Revenge does not ring a bell inside a woman's chest. It just sets down a weight she has been carrying for a long time, and she notices for the first time in her life how heavy it was. Is that what I'm feeling? I believe it is, Ellie. Then I am feeling the right thing. Yes, child, you are. Eleanor opened her eyes. She looked down at her son. Thomas. He did not stir. Thomas, she is gone. She is gone, baby. She is not coming back. She is not in this house. She is not in the walls. She is not in a bottle. She is not on the stairs. She is gone. Do you hear me? Thomas Hartwell, I am telling you this once, and I am never telling it to you again, and you are never going to know her name out of my mouth after tonight. She is gone, and you are here, and you are going to grow up in a house where the air moves. She did not cry. She had cried enough. She rocked her son. Spring came, and then summer, and then the first anniversary of the night she had gone off a balcony at the end of a woman's hands. Eleanor spent the morning of that anniversary in the orchard with her son on a blanket and a basket of peaches at her elbow. Nathaniel Ashford had been coming to Sunday supper for 9 months by then. He had never once asked her for anything she had not offered first. He had ridden out with her to look at a broken levee in February. He had sat up with her father through a bad fever in April. He had taught little Thomas how to close his small fist around a wooden horse, and he had laughed the first time the baby had done it in a way Eleanor had not heard out of a man in a long time. She had not yet said yes to him. She had not yet said no to him either. On the afternoon of the anniversary, she walked up the back stairs of her own house and out onto the balcony that had once tried to kill her. She did not go alone. She took her son. Hattie came behind her at the threshold and stopped there because Hattie understood that some doorways a woman crosses by herself. Eleanor stood on the balcony with her son in her arms. She looked down. The street below was the same street. The cobbles were the same cobbles. The oak at the corner was the same oak. It was a warm July afternoon. There was no storm. There was no wagon. There was no scream. She held her son a little higher. Look, Thomas. The baby, who was 8 months old now and had opinions about everything, looked. This is where your mother fell. This is where a man you will call Uncle Nathaniel caught her in a wagon. This is the last piece of this house that frightened her. I am telling you this standing on it. I am telling you so that one day when you are grown and somebody tries to tell you the story of what happened to your family in the summer of 1817, you will be able to say, I know. My mother told me. My mother told me standing on the balcony. The baby reached for her hair. She let him. Thomas. He babbled something. Thomas, your mother is not afraid of this balcony. Your mother is not afraid of this house. Your mother is not afraid of that street. Your mother is not afraid. Do you hear me? Your mother is not afraid. Hattie from the doorway wiped her eyes once and did not say a word. Eleanor married Nathaniel Ashford in the small parish chapel at St. Michael's in the October of the following year, when Thomas Hartwell was 20 months old and able to walk down the aisle on his own, 2 unsteady feet with Hattie at his elbow. It was a small wedding. John Monroe gave his daughter away. He cried through every word of the service, and he did not apologize for crying, and Eleanor did not ask him to. Ruth Ashford stood up for her brother. Clementine Rivers stood up for Eleanor. Moses drove the carriage that took them home. Sarah Gable was there, in a seat near the back, and when Eleanor passed her on the way out of the church, Sarah took her hand for one brief moment and said low enough that only Eleanor could hear, "You held on, girl." "I held on, Sarah." "You held on." They had a second son the following summer. They named him Samuel for Nathaniel's father. And they had a daughter 3 years after that, and her name by Nathaniel's own insistence was Margaret, for Eleanor's mother, whose grave had been reopened by the circuit court in 1818, and whose death had been formally recorded at long last as what it had always been. The Hartwell plantation prospered. The Ashford boarding house in Charleston passed in time to Ruth's elder son. Moses bought a piece of land north of the city in 1823 and built a house on it and married a schoolteacher from Philadelphia, and Eleanor and Nathaniel drove up for the wedding and brought all 3 of their children. Hattie Caldwell never married. She lived at Hartwell until the end of her days, and she raised Eleanor's 3 children the same way she had raised Eleanor, and when she died in 1849, Eleanor buried her in the Hartwell family plot at her own insistence, and the stone read in the plainest possible letters, "Harriet Caldwell, who kept faith." Caleb Monroe served 11 years of his sentence, was released on his good behavior, and went west to Arkansas and was never heard from in Charleston again. John Monroe lived to see his grandson Thomas ride a horse without holding the reins, and he died quietly in the spring of 1821, with his daughter holding one of his hands and Isaiah holding the other. And he said at the very end the words he had been trying to say to Eleanor for 4 years. "I should have seen her, Ellie." "Papa, you saw her in the end." "Was the end enough, Papa?" "The end was everything. The end was you coming home with me in Mr. Ashford's carriage. The end was you holding my son. The end was enough, Papa. It was enough." He closed his eyes, and he went. And in the end, when Eleanor was an old woman herself, with white hair and 3 grown children and 7 grandchildren, and a husband who still rose before dawn every morning of his life to walk the fields with her, she would sometimes stand on that same balcony at the top of the Meeting Street house, and she would look down at the cobblestones of the street below, and she would think of the girl she had been on a July night in 1817, and the hands on her back, and the fall, and the wagon, and the voice in the dark saying, "You are safe now, I give you my word." She was not afraid of the balcony anymore. She had not been afraid of it in a very long time. She had learned standing there the thing her story had come into the world to teach. The greatest danger to a woman is rarely the stranger at the door. It is the polite hand at the table, the gentle voice at the bedside, the family face that has been smiling at her since she was a child. And a woman does not become safe because the law pities her, or because a kind man rescues her, or because she is lucky enough to fall into a passing wagon. A woman becomes safe when she refuses one final time, and with her whole life to disappear into the story somebody else is writing about her. Eleanor Hartwell. Ashford had refused. She had refused on a balcony in the dark. She had refused in a windowless room above a kitchen. She had refused on the floor of the exchange hall with 400 people watching. She had refused in every courtroom, every drawing room, every letter, every signature, every breath she had drawn between a push and a rope. And because she had refused, her son had a name and a home and a father who loved him, and a grandfather's grave he could visit, and a mother who stood on the balcony she had once fallen from and held him up to the Charleston sky. The widow they tried to bury did not stay buried. She lived. She lived, and she built, and she loved, and she raised her children in a house where the air moved. And when she was finally laid to rest, at the age of 81, in the autumn of 1875, half the low country came to her burial, and the stone above her read, in the words she had chosen for herself 20 years before her death, Eleanor Hartwell Ashford. She held on. And that is the whole of the story.